And now, Good Mike Work Commentaries and Greg Morgan presents the Winged Eagle Podcast.
Happy Friday, boys and girls, and welcome to a very special Friday edition of the Winged Eagle Podcast. Figured today was the best day to do this since we do have a lot of wrestling news to get into, and we have a big pay-per-view coming up tomorrow, and a lot of wrestling tonight. SmackDown and Collision goes head-to-head. We also have Rampage. Both of those will be, AEW's go-home shows to their pay-per-view Full Gear tomorrow, right up the road from me in LA. And, of course, WWE is pushing ahead to Survivor Series next weekend, which is also going to be a big week. So we got a lot of stuff ahead of us here and a lot of stuff to get into today. The reason I'm coming up here today is because tomorrow is Full Gear Saturday. And not only will I not be here watching the pay-per-view, I'm not going to the show either. I'll explain why in just a minute, but there's so much to get into. We weren't up here on Monday night after Raw. The last time you guys saw me was Sunday night for our watch-along, and the last time you guys saw me for a podcast was last Saturday. So we needed to come up here today and discuss the goings-on. A lot of wrestling news is what is going to be the primary focal point of this podcast. We're not going to get into too many results. We're going to talk about what happened on Raw this past Monday with the Drew McIntyre heel turn and what that means for War Games. We're going to talk about what happened on Dynamite last Wednesday, but we're not going to run through the results. We're just going to talk about Kota Ibushi on a bike and everything else that they set up for tomorrow's Full Gear. We will also preview tonight's Collision and SmackDown. We'll take a look at what WWE and AEW have planned for those shows. And at the very end, we will predict the entire Full Gear card. According to my count, including the 0 hour, there are 10 total matches, 1 on the pre-show, 9 on the main card. If I'm wrong about that, let me know, and we'll go through those later on and predict what I think is going to take place tomorrow night at Full Gear. I am going to go to the chat here and say hello to all of you. Again, I hope you're having a great Friday. We are less than 100 subscribers away from the big 40K here on the channel. So if you are not a subscriber, please do so. Also, hit that thumbs up button. It would really mean a lot to me if you did that. And if you're already a subscriber, just get about 80 or 85 of your moms to subscribe to me, and we should be able to hit that 40,000. That would be super duper. But in addition to all of that, we're going to talk about the schedule for this week. We're going to do shout outs. I'll answer questions, answer super chats, all that stuff. We got a good 2 hours here before Collision and SmackDown start. So you'll be getting me for the majority of that. And then I'm going to head off to work tonight. And then I'm going to come back and have myself one heck of a weekend. So it's going to be crazy. You guys are still going to see me and hear from me, but my schedule is all jacked because of work. Let me let you guys know what to expect on the channel this week. First of all, we're going to have another classic watch-along this Sunday. Last week, we watched Survivor Series 1992 on the channel. That was fun, headlined by Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels in the main event. Nails and Boss Man, Kamala and Undertaker in a coffin match. It was a lot of fun. This Sunday, we're going to pick things back up with Survivor Series 1989. This is a fun one. Zeus is involved in this. We've got the teams of 4 striving to survive this time. Hogan, Jake, and Demolition heading up a team to take on Zeus and a bunch of heels. It's going to be a blast. We're going to be doing that on Sunday. On Monday night, this Monday after Raw, we're going to do a big podcast because Monday is probably where you're going to hear the majority of my thoughts on AEW Full Gear. I was thinking about coming up Sunday afternoon. 2 reasons I'm not going to do that. Number 1, football is on, and everybody here in the States is focused on that. Number 2, I got myself into a crazy situation tomorrow, and I might have a very, very late night. So by the time I get home, trying to figure out what happened on Full Gear, prepare a show, an episode for Sunday afternoon, and do a doubleheader on Sunday by doing a podcast, then coming back up and do a watch along. That's going to be too much. Really tough to pull off. Plus, I want to give you guys quality podcast material, and I don't want to just rush or wing anything. So I think what we're going to do is hold off on my thoughts and, review or recap of Full Gear until Monday. And Monday night after Raw will be a big podcast. Our Monday night Raw numbers have sucked lately. So tell your friends, be here this Monday. It would be really nice to have a good audience in there this week, since we're going to have so much to talk about. The reason I'm not going to be watching Full Gear tomorrow is because of my career, the stupid thing that I do to pay my bills. I have 2 jobs. This is one of them, but my primary source of income, unfortunately, comes calling tomorrow. So my plan for months was to go to Full Gear. It's right up the road in LA at the Kia Forum. Been there a couple times for shows already. I was at SoFi this year for WrestleMania. To me, it was just a given that I would be there at Full Gear. Then a couple of months ago, because of what's going on with my job, we've undergone a sale and a transition, and there's a lot of kind of transition things going on right now that's going to wind up as basically a promotion and more money for me. But at the same time, in this transitional process, I really need to be there and be available and not, I could take time off if I wanted to. I'm just trying to do the right thing. So I'm glad that I held off and waited, because I'm like, you know what? I better not buy tickets yet for Full Gear. I better wait and just see how it's going with work. And if everything's cool, I'll pick up some tickets at the beginning of November and go to the show. No big deal. But as we got into November, I'm like, I'm just going to hold out. And I'm glad that I did, because I was approached to do this big, giant event at a billionaire's house tomorrow. It's very important. They need me there. I could have taken it off, but it looks much better if I do. Plus, I get a fat commission for being there. So it just made the most sense for me to skip it, as much as I don't want to. But WWE, AEW runs through Southern California at least once a year, maybe twice. I will hit the next show, but seeing everybody in LA right now for Collision tonight, meeting the talent. I think they were in Ontario on Wednesday for Dynamite. Seeing AEW in my neighborhood and me not going to the show is starting to bug me a little bit, but unfortunately, that's life. Nothing you can do about it. It won't be the last time they come through here. I'll be sure to hit the next one. So if any of you are going to Full Gear, hoping to meet me or meet up or say hi, sorry that I'm not going. I'm kind of bummed that I'm not, but that's life. Sometimes you just have to do some adulting, and that's what comes. But if we can triple our subscribers, I'll just quit my fucking job and do this full time. Then I'll go to all the shows. But I need some help from you guys to do that if we ever want to make that possible. So unfortunately, tomorrow I chose career over wrestling, which I don't like to do, but it's the smart move if I want to keep a roof over my head and continue to be able to produce content for you guys in my free time. It's just the breaks, man. So anyway, not attending Full Gear. Not only am I not attending Full Gear, I'm not watching it either. And I got to decide if I even want to slap down the $50 and watch it in the middle of the night. It just depends on how late my night goes tomorrow. I could be there until 2:00 in the morning. And if I am, I'm not going to want to come home and then pay $50 to watch a pay-per-view in the middle of the night. I don't know how I'm going to handle Full Gear yet. I'm working that out. So it may very well be the first ever AEW pay-per-view that I've not purchased. So I probably will still watch it. I just got to wait and see how everything goes tomorrow. Tomorrow's going to be a weird day. So that's why I'm not going to be here for Full Gear. I apologize for that. But next Saturday, I will be here for Survivor Series. At the very least, you're getting a post-show review out of me. We might do a live reaction next Saturday. Just watch the whole damn War Games show together. So I will make up for things next week. Like I said, podcast Sunday, watch along Sunday, big podcast Monday after Raw. We'll be up here probably on Thursday next week to do Survivor Series and War Games predictions. And then on Saturday, you'll get me for a watch along or a review or both. So keep that in mind. Big week coming up here on the channel. I'm just going to be absent tomorrow. I think that covers all of my scheduling that I had to fill you guys in on. I better go over here to the chat and say hi to you guys too, because we have to talk about wrestling news, and we only have 120 minutes to do this until SmackDown and Collision starts. Before we even went live, Clofix C dropped in 2 very nice supers. Thank you so much for that, my friend. Hey, Greg, can it be you stopped shouting out your Patreon supporters? Also, last week you mentioned that debuting Jade Cargill in a multi-man. Oh, yeah. So I was talking about debuting her in a multi-man match. That was probably just a slip of the tongue. I meant multi-women. The Patreon shout-outs, I guess I have stopped doing those verbally. I thought I had some written down. We'll get back into that. What was your next one? Match at Survivor Series would be a bad idea, but didn't that work out well for Taker? Okay, these are 2 comments. Okay, also mentioned debuting Jade Cargill in a multi-man match at Survivor Series would be a bad idea, but didn't that work out well for Taker? And finally, happy to see you hit 40K just around the time that I turned 40. Holy shit. Congrats from a longtime Patreon supporter. Thank you so much, Clofik. I have been putting up some content on Patreon, but I have been shitty about the shout-outs here. I'll work something out. I've been putting the members down on the ticker there. We'll work something out to continue to acknowledge those great supporters on Patreon. I might have said, I'm trying to remember a few weeks ago if I said debuting Jade in a multi-man or a multi-person match would be a bad idea. I wouldn't say it would be a bad idea. It just might not be how I would debut her. But the way things are looking at like right now with War Games, as we'll talk about here in a little while, there might be a spot for her on the women's side because the baby faces are going to need someone. They might even need two people. And I don't know if I want to see Becky Lynch get involved in that, but she might. We'll just have to wait and see there. If it turns out to be Jade Cargill, you're right. It worked out well for Taker. That was 33 years ago, so I don't know how that translates now. WWE, I trust them to do what they're going to do with Jade. They're bringing her in. They're investing a lot of money. This is going to be their project, and, I kind of trust whatever process Triple H wants to implement with her. I'm not sure if there's really a right or a wrong way. If they debuted her at War Games, I don't necessarily think that's wrong. I'm just not sure if I had the pen, if that's what I would do. That's all. But it all depends on how it happens after the fact. We'll keep our eye on Jade and where she fits into this whole thing. I want to welcome channel members, Mab, JJ Leg, Deshaun Robinson. We got Stone Cold X, the Juliet. Our friends are here. We got MJ Parker and Isaac as well, rounding out some of those channel members. Want to say hi to Colin Wright. Appreciate that super chat drop from you. Hey, Greg, Khan's big signing will be his dealer. Okay, enough of that stuff. You guys are all weird. No, I'm kidding. Tony Khan's signing will not be his dealer because I don't think his dealer is respected by every AEW audience member. But I think we know who it's going to be, and we're going to be talking about that here in just a second. Also want to shout out Jose Lopez, WWE fan, Mohammed, Steven Harris, Sonic Plays is here as well, Charlie Quimby, Mohammed, Red Raven Rucker, all y'all hanging out today. Thank you for being here. Do me a favor. Drop a thumbs up for me on that like button. Just smash it hard. Orange punch it. Superman punch it. Macho Man elbow drop that like button for me. I'd appreciate it. And again, we're less than 100 subscribers away from 40,000, so we'll be there pretty much any minute now. We got to talk about wrestling news first. Big news, of course, is tomorrow night's AEW Full Gear, live from the Kia Forum on a show that I'm not going to be at, and it's still bothering me. I was there in January for Dynamite in the Forum, and that was a really awesome show when Adam Cole came back. I was here in San Diego for Dynamite in May. WrestleMania at SoFi, but just couldn't make this one happen, which sucks because I thought it would have been really cool for me to, I've never really seen this before, I don't think, because I didn't go to WCW shows during the Monday Night Wars. If I would have gone to Full Gear tomorrow, I would have watched Adam Copeland compete on 2 pay-per-views for 2 different companies in the same year. Hell in a Cell match versus Balor at WrestleMania and 6-man for AEW right across the street at the Forum. Would have been cool, but unfortunately couldn't make it happen. But we got to talk about the news. And in addition to tomorrow's Full Gear card and all the great matches lined up for AEW, Tony Khan announced this past Wednesday, before Dynamite, not even on the show, right? He announced this via tweet that AEW has come to terms on the signing of a talent who is one of the best current wrestlers in the world, that is respected by virtually every AEW audience member. Unfortunately, I did not quote the tweet exactly there. I don't have it anymore. I deleted the tweet. But anyway, Tony Khan was teasing this big signing. He claims that the company has come to terms with this signing. One of the world's best wrestlers, respected by virtually every AEW fan. You start adding up those little tidbits on Tony Khan's tweet, and I think it kind of gives it away who it is. Now, there's also been a lot of speculation as to who it might be, a lot of names floating around, and that's what's fun. Unfortunately, what that can do when Tony Khan makes announcements like this is it can really make expectation levels very high. And Tony Khan sometimes will do that when he says he has a big announcement that he's going to announce on Dynamite or whatnot. And then when he announces it, it's just kind of like lukewarm. And like, why did you make such a big deal about this? So if Tony Khan's going out of his way to say he's got a big signing that he's going to introduce at Full Gear, with him, it could be anybody. But he always is going to set expectations high when he makes an announcement like that. Here's what the tweet said word for word. It says, AEW, this is on November 15th, before Dynamite. AEW has agreed to terms with one of the world's best wrestlers, a pro who is known and respected by virtually every AEW fan. They'll come to LA to sign their contract this Saturday at Full Gear. Now, the speculation started immediately popping off with several names. I think the two big names at the top of everyone's list is Mercedes Moné and Will Ospreay. To me, it's down to them. Really, it can only be one of them. There are some other names that I just can't see it being. One name could possibly be Ronda. Ronda Rousey, I think, might wind up doing some work for AEW. And she worked and made her debut for Wrestling Revolver last night in LA. Hangman Page attacked Swerve Strickland on that show. Sami Callihan teamed up with Jon Moxley. Ronda, I think, was working with Athena and Billy Starks. So Ronda, I could see coming into AEW in the future, but I don't know if she would be the one Tony Khan is referring to here based on the wording of his tweet, where someone like Mercedes Moné would make much more sense. So would Will Ospreay. And the reason I think it's Will Ospreay is because he's the one that makes the most sense based on the wording of his tweet. I believe that he is the best wrestler current active in the world right now. He is going to be a big signing for AEW. The problem is when his name was brought up this week, he's openly said in interviews publicly that his New Japan contract does not end until February of 2024. So in order for it to be Will Ospreay, New Japan needed to make some concessions or say, okay, we understand that you're not staying. So allowing him the freedom to perhaps negotiate a deal with somebody before his contract is up, that sounds like what would have to happen here if the announcement turns out to be Will Ospreay. Mercedes Moné, nobody really knows what's going on with her. There appeared to be plans to use her in AEW. I don't think Tony Khan would have brought her to All In had that not been the case. There's also been WWE rumors popping back up about her. So I feel like Mercedes Moné is a definite possibility, but I'm kind of thinking and hoping that this is going to be Will Ospreay. Andrew Zarian is hearing that it's Ospreay. And Fightful Select is hearing that it's not Mercedes. So that sounds pretty accurate to me. PW Insider said that sources have indicated that Will Ospreay has already received the blessing of New Japan to explore discussions with other companies, and there are at least 3 companies who are interested in Ospreay and who have reached out to him with offers. So that's probably WWE, AEW, and Impact, I would assume. So I kind of feel like it's going to be Will Ospreay tomorrow. I think he's the one that makes the most sense. I think that's the one that Tony Khan needs to really shell out the big bucks for. He's the one that's got, the brightest future. He's only 30 years old. He can be a big, big, big part of AEW. And that's especially as a main eventer going forward. And he's a guy that I think even if he went to WWE, he would be at Seth Rollins' level if he went there. So Ospreay is going to be a huge star no matter where he goes. But I've always felt ever since the beginning that AEW would be the better landing spot for him right now. Even though if he went to WWE, I'd be fine with it. It feels like AEW is where he was going to land. Most people believed that and felt that. And if that's what he knows his plan is going to be, even if his contract with New Japan is not technically up, but he already knows and has made the decision on what he wants to do, that's cool that if he did get the blessing from New Japan to go ahead and work out these deals and go ahead and do it, then that kind of indicates that tomorrow Will Ospreay is going to be the guy that Tony Khan announces. Now, if it turns out to be Ospreay, who we've already seen in AEW a bunch of times, are fans going to consider that a disappointment? Hopefully not, because I think Tony Khan was careful this time with his wording. He didn't say a blockbuster free agent signing going to be revealed to the world at Full Gear and it's going to change the landscape of AEW and pro wrestling. He didn't say any of that. He just said AEW has come to terms on a deal for one of the best pro wrestlers in the world and someone who's respected by everyone. That wrestler could also be MJF. Don't forget. MJF has got a busy day tomorrow. He's got 2 matches, 2 championship matches. And if they tried to work in a contract signing in the middle of those 2, that would seem odd to me. So I don't think it's going to be MJF, even though I think behind the scenes, MJF is already either verbally agreed or contractually agreed to stick around with AEW. I do not think he's going to be making the jump to WWE in 2024. I think his bread is buttered in AEW right now, and that's where he should build this part of his legacy. He wants to go in WWE 5 years, fucking do it. But this is where you need to be right now. So it could be MJF, but I doubt it. It could be Mercedes Moné, but I doubt it. I'm thinking it's going to be Will Ospreay. Some other names that it could be. I mentioned Ronda Rousey, who made her debut for Wrestling Revolver last night. I do think she's going to eventually come into AEW. I just don't think it's going to be tomorrow. Sami Callihan is another guy with his relationship with Moxley and all of that. There's been talk of him coming in as well, but I can't see him being the one that Tony Khan is referring to. I think if it was Sami, it would be considered a letdown based on Tony Khan's hype tweet. If you just debut Sami without an announcement, people are going to love it. But if you hype it up where they're thinking it's going to be Mercedes Moné or somebody better, and then it's Sami Callihan, that's probably going to be viewed as a disappointment for the audience. Plus, you got to consider the market you're in. This is LA. You don't want to bring out any schmuck out there. So Sami is going to do great things if he comes into AEW. I just don't think he can be the one. Somebody else that can't be is someone like Dolph Ziggler or Matt Riddle or any of the other WWE releases from September, because their 90-day no-competes aren't up yet. So when you really look at it, I think the only person it could realistically be tomorrow is Will Ospreay. So that's my early prediction for tomorrow. Tony Khan is going to officially announce the signing of Will Ospreay. I personally will not take that as a disappointment or a letdown. This is a signing that I think AEW really needed to land. If they were to lose him to WWE, that could be rough for them, especially when you can see the legacy that Ospreay is just primed to build for himself. I think he's going to create a career equally as good as AJ Styles, or close to it. You know, he's going to be at that type of a level, regardless of whatever company he's in. It doesn't matter. AJ Styles, look at the legacy he made for himself in WWE and TNA, especially TNA, and then came to the WWE. Will Ospreay could follow the same path. He could build his whole career outside of the WWE umbrella and then come there as a veteran and fucking cash in. He could do that. That's what AJ did. All the stuff AJ did in Impact or TNA and New Japan and his entire career, you know, in Ring of Honor, going everywhere except for Vince, and then coming there in the twilight of his career and his last, 10 or 12 years as an active performer and winning multiple championships and, being, immortalized in wrestling history, by coming to the WWE and finishing out your career there. Maybe that's what Will Ospreay could do. If he spends 5 years in AEW and then makes the jump, we will see. But I think tomorrow Tony Khan is going to announce Will Ospreay, and I am not disappointed with that at all, because that's crucial. I don't think that AEW would want to lose Ospreay to WWE, because I think with Vince gone and Triple H in charge, WWE would make Will Ospreay a megastar, just like I'm sure AEW is going to do, but WWE might even be able to push him a little bit further with the exposure and whatnot. I think a Will Ospreay match, an entrance at WrestleMania one day would be a beautiful sight to see. Another reason why I think it's important for them to land Will Ospreay is because of the rumors that Meltzer wrote about in the latest Observer about WWE potentially being interested in Okada. Now, that's kind of crazy to me. I never really thought we would see Okada in WWE. He's been, loyal to Japan for so long. But Shinsuke Nakamura is close with Okada, and Nakamura has been cutting some cryptic vignettes on Raw. This past Monday, we saw one. Felt like he was talking to one of the War Games baby faces. After your next battle, you're going to be less of a man. Shit like that. And I'm like, well, who can he really be talking about there? Who's he targeting? It's got to be Cody or one of those guys, or Jay or Sammy or somebody. Maybe it's Okada is who he's talking about. And maybe Okada, I don't know what his contract status is. It feels like he is supposed to wrestle Danielson at Wrestle Kingdom, right? I thought that's what they were going with. And if he does, I think he owes Danielson a win, or Danielson owes him a win. So I think Okada would beat him. Then you're going to beat Danielson, and then maybe he goes to WWE. That would be crazy. Here's what Meltzer wrote in the latest Observer, and I quote, "The pitch is that now that he's 36 and he's close with Nakamura, and Nakamura has worked years in WWE and it's far easier on his body, the idea is that WWE is the one thing Okada has never done, and he's done everything he can do in New Japan. One person who buzzed us about the renewed interest in Okada said that one of the reasons Nakamura is getting a renewed push is to show Okada that this regime is not going to treat Japanese wrestlers like the typical or the stereotypical children-like role. I guess he's referring to people like Tozawa, because Vince does that with people who don't speak fluent English. But this is a new regime. Okada is a name always brought up, but there's no indication there's anything new to this other than there's been more talk of late. So just the fact that WWE has interest in him, if anybody is able to convince Okada to come to WWE, it would probably be in a regime that does not include Vince McMahon. So I, for one, would love it, because that would be something new and something fresh. We've seen now Okada wrestle in AEW a few times. We've even seen him casually drop in, almost announced last minute, to work a tag match on Dynamite. He's worked a couple of pay-per-views, worked Danielson at Forbidden Door and a few others. So we've seen him everywhere except for WWE. And we saw how WWE treated Shinsuke Nakamura in NXT. And then, of course, when he got to the main roster, he's had some speed bumps along the way, but they've always overall treated and paid Shinsuke Nakamura very well. And now with Triple H there, who is someone who does not have that Vince McMahon mentality, especially with foreign wrestlers or Japanese wrestlers, having someone with the legacy of Okada coming in, you would think if you're in Okada's shoes, you would run the risk of harming and damaging this legacy if you went to work for Vince McMahon. But you're not. You're going to work for Triple H. And I think there's a big difference there. And I think if you're looking at things from someone who is already built himself a legendary resume and career, I personally would feel much more comfortable, with Triple H than a Vince McMahon, that they're not going to fuck me and completely ruin everything I worked so hard to build. Where Vince McMahon could do that in one fell swoop. Eric Bischoff used to do that shit too. Just take the masks right off the luchadors like it was nothing. Forget about the history, what it meant, how hard they worked to get that mask, all of that stuff, the tradition. Nope. It's fall brawl. Take it off. So I would love this. I would absolutely love this if Okada came into WWE. I would. And I think that would be a good trade too, If Will Ospreay is going to sign with AEW, I think Okada coming into WWE would be cool. I think they could do cool things with him. Whether, he's opponents or allies with Nakamura at some point, what brand he's on, the matches he could have with Randy Orton, and so many other guys that we've envisioned in the past of him working with. It's too bad that Tanahashi didn't get there when he was younger to work with John Cena like 8-10 years ago. How great that would have been, but Okada, put him in the ring and have a dropkick contest with Randy Orton. Pass the lotion. So I hope that Okada comes in. I hope he does. I hope this shit that Dave Meltzer is talking about, I hope there's substance to it and it's not just talk and rumors and what ifs. I hope it happens. I do. But if it happens, sounds like that's not going to be something that's going to happen well into next year at the earliest. So I don't know. I don't even know what Okada's contract status is at the moment or when he would ever be available to leave New Japan if that was going to happen. So we'll keep our eye on Okada. What's cool about what's going on in wrestling right now is how much who's it going to be there is going on. Who's it going to be? First of all, we don't know who it's going to be tomorrow. We probably do. I think it's going to be Will Ospreay signing with AEW, but you got a whodunit over there. You got a couple of whodunits. Who's under the devil mask? Who are the henchmen? Who is Tony Khan going to sign? Who's his big signing coming in tomorrow? Then on WWE's side, Drew McIntyre turns heel, joins Judgment Day at War Games. Now, the babyfaces need a teammate. Who's it going to be? Over on SmackDown, the babyface women need a teammate or two, I think, up against that strong faction of Damage Control. So who's it going to be over there? We got lots of who's it going to be's. I like that. You know who it's not going to be? You know who's not under the devil mask, and you know who's not going to be joining the babyfaces at Survivor Series? CM Punk. It's not CM Punk. CM Punk continues to lean into the rumors. He's just having fun here. He posted something on Instagram the other day where there was a reference to the devil with 666, and he's playing War Pigs in the background. So he's kind of trying to reference the AEW and WWE rumors simultaneously. Fans jump all over this. There's an entire herd of people, of fans out there that believe with every inch of their illiterate hearts that CM Punk is under the devil mask, that he's there right now working in AEW, just weeks after Tony Khan publicly said that he feared for his life and it was the scariest situation he's ever been in, had to fire somebody that he loved and didn't want to fire, and a firing that really set in motion a downswing in AEW's business. So this would almost have to be like a self-inflicted damage on yourself just to try to work the entire wrestling world and pull off the most elaborate work of all time. I don't believe that for a second, that that's what's going on. I also don't believe that CM Punk is going to be showing up at Survivor Series in Chicago. Sure, the babyfaces need a teammate right now, but I think we all know who that teammate's going to be. And it's going to be someone, let's say a little more vintage. It's not going to be CM Punk. Where would CM Punk even fit into that? He would almost be in the way. I have a feeling they're going to pull off a big angle at Survivor Series. I've been saying right from the start that I believe Damian Priest will walk out of Survivor Series as the WWE World Heavyweight Champion. I think he's going to cash in and beat Seth Rollins before or after the match at War Games, probably after, in some sort of situation. Because it's all set up that way. Roman Reigns isn't even defending the title. The men's War Game is going to be the main event. If you're ever going to do a cash-in on Priest, you don't want to do it in the middle of the card like in Crown Jewel or something like that. Find yourself a situation where he's in the main event of a pay-per-view and Roman's not on the show to take away the spotlight from the other championship. The stars are aligned here, and I think they're going to do that at Survivor Series next Saturday. So if they did have something like that planned, CM Punk coming in to be a part of this match would completely fuck all of that up, because nobody would be talking about Damian Priest's cash-in. They would be talking about CM Punk returning to WWE. So WWE would probably then postpone the cash-in, which then would fuck up Damian Priest's plans. I'd be pretty upset to hear that I was going to win the title at Survivor Series, but now that CM Punk's coming in, we're going to hold that off. Say what? So I just don't see Punk being either scenario. In the future, anything can happen. CM Punk can show up in WWE next year and work WrestleMania. Who knows? Him and Tony Khan could have a meeting in 9 months in a hotel room. They patch everything up and bring CM Punk in next year to AEW. That all could happen in the future. But what I'm telling you is it's not going to happen at either one of these shows tomorrow or at Survivor Series. If we get a big devil reveal tomorrow night, there is no way it's going to be CM Punk. If it is CM Punk, I'm going to crop this part out where I'm swearing to you guys that it's not going to be and post it all over social media just to show how foolish I was. So I will do that if it's CM Punk tomorrow. I promise, because what do I care? But I don't believe it's going to be CM Punk, but I'm really surprised how many people are just convinced and kind of being assholes about it. It's fun. It's one thing to speculate, juicy speculation. We love that here. It's fun just to talk about every scenario, no matter how crazy. I would never insult someone for coming up with the craziest scenario ever. But when you're so adamant that everybody else is stupid and you're the only one that understands, that's pretty ridiculous. And there's a bunch of people that really, really, really feel both camps, really. There's a camp that believes CM Punk's showing up next Saturday at Survivor Series, and there's a camp that believes he's the devil. He's neither. That's all I'm going to tell you. Here, speaking of the devil, by the way, speaking of AEW's devil, here's what FightFul Select had to say about that this week. I believe this was posted on Thursday. It says here, on a recent FightFul show, the panel were speculating whether or not the people that have been under the mask in the segments, and the devil segments, are actually who is planned for the eventual reveal. And we've been talking about that too with the devil mask. When you analyze somebody's body, I'm like, it might not even be him. So it's really kind of pointless to do that. Goes on to say that multiple sources reached out to confirm that is the case, meaning that everybody that you see right now under the masks, those are the ones that are going to be playing these roles. I lost my spot. Multiple sources reached out to confirm that is the case and that several people within the company know the identities, but have done well at keeping it quiet. You may remember in the case of Retribution, not only were the eventual reveals not the people under the masks originally, but the talent themselves had no idea for a while what they were planned for. Those we've spoke to are of the belief it is not CM Punk and saying that it would be a huge work on those in the know if it was him. It goes without saying, but he hasn't been portraying the person under the mask. And that's what we've been trying to say here on the podcast as well. It would actually make no sense if it was CM Punk, because if CM Punk was not fired from AEW and he was there available to work, you would want him on TV. He's not the guy that you would want off of TV for 2 or 3 months and do a big reveal when he's so valuable to your ratings and what it means. It's just not going to be happening that way. It goes on to finish up the write-up, ends by saying, in case you're wondering, we're told Dr. Britt Baker hasn't been under the mask either, so her comments within interviews this past week were not a swerve if people in the company are to be believed. And Britt was one of the names rumored. I think the first time we saw the Devil, it did look a little small, and I'm like, yeah, that could have been Britt Baker. You never know, but turns out it's not going to be her either, and the people under the masks apparently are going to be the ones actually playing the henchmen. I believe Wardlow for sure is one of the henchmen. There was a big one a few weeks ago. I think the week where they chucked Bowens through the glass, hell, that might have been Wardlow, the guy that chucked him through the glass. You could tell one of them was kind of big. So that's interesting to know that they're not using body doubles and they're not doing this angle and beginning it before they know who the identities of these people are. Maybe internally they're still not totally sure on a Devil yet, and maybe it's going to be MJF, maybe it's going to be Adam Cole, maybe they're not sure yet there, but I feel like Wardlow's got to be one of them. So that's the latest on the Devil, and we didn't see a whole lot of Devil storyline furthering on Dynamite on Wednesday either. So I'm thinking that MJF is probably going to survive Full Gear tomorrow without too much Devil stuff. I think we're going to get some Devil. I think we're going to get some Devil at Full Gear. Not sure if we're going to get a Devil reveal. I don't know. Because if it is going to be Adam Cole, he's probably not going to be physically able enough to do that yet, revealing himself to be the Devil in the same building he returned at back in January. But it would be cool if he was. It'd be a lot cooler if he was. Speaking of more AEW stuff, this past Saturday on Collision, Tony Khan announced what is going to be basically AEW's version of the G1 tournament. It's called the AEW Continental Classic. I believe this is going to be an annual thing. Tony Khan made this announcement with Danielson standing right next to him with his head all bandaged up from the orbital bone injury. And Danielson is the first entrant into this thing. So it's going to be a round robin similar to the G1. It's going to be 12-man tournament with 2 groups of 6. And the tournament will take place across all 3 of AEW's TV shows starting on November 22nd, with league finals taking place on the December 27th edition of Dynamite in Orlando, Florida. The tournament finals will take place at AEW's final pay-per-view event of the year, World's End, on December 30th in Long Island. So this will be about a month-long tournament with the finals right at the end of the year. This will be fun. I'm actually kind of excited about this because they already do the Owen. And now doing something similar to the G1, I'm glad they're kind of pouncing on this before, Triple H decides to do it, because Vince McMahon never really liked tournaments, and WWE never really had a tournament annually on their schedule other than the King of the Ring tournament, which didn't even really last very long. And by the time, you got to it, they did a lot of the matches on TV, and it just kind of became a shell. It was only good for the first couple of years there, and then it kind of dwindled away, and the level of prestige felt less and less with each passing year in the King of the Ring, until eventually they just got rid of it, which is strange because tournaments should be so much easier to book. Because one of my biggest complaints and critiques of having big pay-per-views like Hell in the Cell and Elimination Chambers and all these gimmick shows is that a lot of times these matches, you need very personal or high drama or violent feuds taking place. And what if you just don't have one of those going on? Then you have to force feed a cage match or a cell match, and it just doesn't make any sense. With a tournament, it's much easier because you don't really need stories going into it because it's a tournament. You can have heel versus heel, babyface versus heel, babyface versus babyface. It's all about competing to win a prize, which means you don't have to worry so much about setting up storylines. A lot of times I've always viewed Hell in the Cell pay-per-views and TLCs and shit like that as obstacles in the way of WWE creatively booking things, because then you have to worry about oh, we got Hell in a Cell in a couple months. We better get two guys hating each other enough to stick them in there. And it just felt, very cheap. So tournaments are much better. And if you have a tournament that does well every year and fans enjoy, like I said, AEW already does the Owen. So now they're doing the Continental. I would probably end it with the tournaments here. If I was Tony Khan, if you want to do a tournament to crown a new champion, if you have a vacation or a vacating, is vacation a right word? When somebody vacates the title, is that a vacation? No, it's probably vacating the title. If you have a vacant championship that you need to, you need to fill and you need to do an impromptu tournament, fine. But if in terms of having regular tournaments, I would just do these two. I would not overdo it because I think they would be fun. You've got one standard, single elimination Owen tournament, and then you've got the round robin, at the end of the year, which is going to be their answer to the G1. WWE's had some pretty fun tournaments in the past with the Cruiserweight Classics, the Dusty Classics, the Women's Mae Young. Tournaments are fun. So this has potential. I like this because, tournaments, this can be for the wrestling fan. This isn't something that's going to really need or desire, a whole lot of stories going into it. If there happens to be a story in one of these matches, that's just extra. But, the tournament, you can just book it every year and you can use it as a stepping stone to get someone over or get somebody, a boost or to celebrate an already existing legend like Danielson. Now, here's what I would do with this tournament. I would treat the AEW Continental Classic exactly how WWE treated the first ever King of the Ring when they gave it to Bret Hart. I would give it to Danielson. There's going to be plenty of times in the future where you can use a tournament to elevate a young star. Because if Danielson wins, that's what you're going to hear on the other side. Their little Pavlovian brains are just going to trigger, and they're going to say, oh, it should be given to a young star. Not always, man. Jeez, have some fun. Think a little. So that's what I would do. I would have Danielson win this thing. And then he's going to be hopefully still going into Wrestle Kingdom to wrestle Okada, possibly get his win back there. And then if all goes well, he will wrestle at All In next year in London. And after that, he will just have a little bit of time left before, according to him, he is going to retire because he's in his last year as an active professional wrestler. So I think it would be awesome if you're going to do this tournament every year. You know how I am about legacies. I talk about this all the time. I talk about championship lineages and title histories and company histories. When you look back throughout history and you say, okay, who's the name you would want to be the first one on this list? That's why I picked Seth Rollins to win the World Heavyweight title earlier this year for WWE. I'm like, when you look at who's left in the tournament, he's the one I would probably give it to. He'd be a perfect first name. He already has built himself a Hall of Fame career in WWE. You're safe with that name at the beginning of your legacy, instead of giving it to somebody who's relatively new, only been in the company a little while, and you don't know what their future is going to be. And Danielson is going to go down as arguably one of the best wrestlers to ever do it. And I think having his name as being the first winner of this tournament that hopefully becomes an annual and very prestigious event for AEW, he's the name that I would want. And then in future years, you can worry about putting on a young guy and all that shit. Then you can have all those conversations in the world that you want. But I think the new tournament should go to Danielson. He was the first entrant. A lot like, if you guys remember this, Bret Hart did not have to qualify for the King of the Ring in 1993. He was the number one seed. He got an automatic bid. There was no qualifying match. So I don't know. AEW is not going to have enough time to do a bunch of qualifying matches here because the tournament kicks off, I believe, in a couple of days. But announcing Danielson first kind of reminds me of how WWE announced Bret Hart first for the King of the Ring. Just something to think about there. But I'm looking forward to that for AEW. WWE's doing fun shit too. Backlash is coming to France May 4th, 2024 at the LDLC Arena in Lyon Dessignes or Dessignes. I don't know how you say that city, but Backlash is coming to France. WWE going balls to the wall with their international shows now. They have Elimination Chamber coming up in Australia. That's going to be a stadium show. Then just a couple of months later, they're going to France now for Backlash. That crowd is just going to be insane. And I talked about this in my last podcast about how I think it's really, really smart for WWE to run more and more international shows, not like they did in the 90s where you just give them an England-only pay-per-view or whatever. No, run actual pay-per-view events there. Go outside of the continental U.S. Leave our our brick of land and go elsewhere. We went a little bit south, just down to our own, to Puerto Rico, and look at the crowd we had last year for Backlash. France is probably going to bring the same energy. You always get the same energy in London, anywhere in the UK. And Saudi Arabia, now, of course, big partners of WWE, gets a couple of shows a year. And I've always been a fan of this because of the energy that these crowds can bring, because getting WWE events isn't as common as what we get here in the States, although that's starting to change now. If you notice, more and more pay-per-views are going to be international shows, and I think that's only going to increase every year. And as a fan who likes watching, on screen, I appreciate that, because sometimes a crowd can really make or break a show, and when the crowd is super hot and super jacked, it's almost impossible for the show to fail, because if the crowd's jacked, they're jacked. And all the talent has to do is go out there and do what they're paid to do and just be pros and know how to work a crowd like that. And it should be easy money, And so I think that's great. I'm excited for Backlash in France. I'm excited for Elimination Chamber in Australia. And this is great. This is really great. WWE, I guess, this week is also partnered with the Big 12 Conference. Yeah, they're probably going to make championship belts and all that for the colleges, so that will be stupid. But again, just more partnering to get their brand out there. They're really flexing their global muscles, and showing why they're the number one company in the world, and why really at the end of the day, in terms of company size and in global reach, they really do dwarf AEW. But AEW is an alternative, and I love AEW. Rey Mysterio, we should mention him. Turns out he is going to be out 6 to 8 weeks after knee surgery. So I guess maybe that angle we saw last week on SmackDown was a way to write Rey off TV, because one of my concerns was I was under the impression that we would probably get Rey Mysterio versus Santos Escobar at WrestleMania, based on how they've been building this up the past couple of months, where you could kind of smell that eventually something's going to collapse there between Rey and Santos. But then when they broke them up last week, I was wondering if it was too early, if that was going to be premature, if the plan was to go with these guys at WrestleMania. How are you going to fill the time until then? Well, you're going to fill 6 to 8 weeks of it with Rey being on the shelf. So when he comes back, they probably can still make this match happen at WrestleMania, perhaps even earlier. Hopefully Rey will be able to be in the Royal Rumble, and maybe that's where you can have, those two guys can cancel each other out or throw each other out of the ring or whatever, setting up your Mania match. Who knows? Best of luck to Rey, who is out again with some knee surgery. Before we talk about Monday Night Raw, let me cruise over here to the chat and see if there's anything I missed, because I have not been over there in a minute. Let me hit a refresh here, because I don't even know what's going on. Right on. If you guys can keep hitting that thumbs up button for me, I would really, really appreciate it. There you go. See, Isaac is saying the same thing. So that means Rey is likely going to return at the Rumble and eliminate Santos, setting up their WrestleMania match. But you still have a lot of time. You're going to have an Elimination Chamber event. Probably a good thing to do for that event is to put one or both of them in the Chamber match. So that ties them up doing that to hold off the Mania match even further. But yeah, probably a Rumble collision there is what we're going to see from Rey and Santos. The Survivor Series Deadly Game tourney was the best. Yeah, it was pretty good. I actually have to admit, I think I have the fondest memories. Oh, shit. Okay, my microphone is still on, right? I think I have the fondest memories of WrestleMania 4 as a tournament, but I think you're right that Survivor Series Deadly Game was better. I didn't screw up my audio there, did I? Here we go. I'm checking it. Okay. Okay, we're good. I'm just making sure you could still hear me, since I damn near cut my own cord there. But yeah, Survivor Series 98 was one of the best, and probably the best. Yeah, JJ Leg, we didn't mention Jack Perry earlier on, if he was going to be the devil or not. I've talked about that before in the last couple of shows, that I would advise against that if I was AEW. I feel like Jack Perry being the devil is going to get you the wrong kind of heat. It's going to get you the channel changing, go away heat. Jack Perry doesn't have the type of heel heat that you want. You know what I mean? Because right now he's a very controversial figure. And when he does come back, it's going to be interesting to see, what the audience reaction is going to be to him and what AEW is going to do with him, if they're going to lean in to this. I mean, he was already a heel. He was already being a D-bag as it was. So now if he's, comes back and continues that heel persona, a lot of fans are, he's, they're mocking CM Punk or something like that. I don't know if that's going to be the case or not, if they're going to use any of that, or if they're just going to try to put it all behind him and just resume Jack Perry's character as if none of that shit ever happened. We will see. You don't really know. JJ Leg, I think Okada is All Elite and when Will Ospreay is WWE. Wow. So you've got it reversed. You think Okada might be announced tomorrow and Ospreay's going to WWE. I'm opposite of you. I think tomorrow Tony Khan will announce Will Ospreay. Faux show. And Okada to NXT. I don't know. Okada and NXT would be fun, but it would be more fun to see Okada on the main roster. Max Pokey, bruh. Hope you're doing well. Full Gear looks very fun. Yeah, the card looks good. I'm excited to predict it here in just a minute. Jose Lopez, what if it's Mustafa Ali? That would be great. You mean the devil, right? I think that would be awesome if it was. And that's something that you could wait until his 90-day is over, because I think he was one of the September releases, right? So if the devil is Mustafa Ali, that would be perfectly fine with me. I think the AEW bad faith haters would reject it because, it didn't work in WWE, so what are they going to do with him or whatever. I think it makes more sense for it not to be Mustafa Ali. It makes more sense for it to be Adam Cole or MJF or even a Jack Perry, even though I don't want it to be, or Wardlow. Having it be Ali, I don't know, but it would be cool because it would be a tie-in to what he did in WWE. So I wouldn't necessarily be against that at all. Now, Juliet is saying everybody is saying Mercedes is the big signing at Full Gear. I'll bust a gut laughing when it turns out to be Goldberg. That's another name that I'm going to cross off the list. I don't think it's going to be Goldberg tomorrow. I don't think it's going to be a legend like that because of Tony Khan's wording. He says one of the best wrestlers in the world. Goldberg is long since retired, even though he turns up to squash people every now and then. He is not respected or by every member of the AEW universe or whatever. And again, it's not going to be Dolph Ziggler yet. I mean, I think, what is this? Is his name Nick? His brother's Ryan Nemeth. He's Nick Nemeth, right? So Dolph Ziggler will come into AEW, absolutely. And I do believe that most of the AEW audience respects Dolph, but I don't think it can be Dolph because of the 90 days. So Dolph will get there. It just ain't him this time. Yeah, and can't really even be Kota Ibushi because he got the Elite graphic the other night. He's officially signed. I think they basically wanted to see Ibushi's 10-speed bike riding abilities and make sure that he could do that before inking him to a long-term deal. But once they saw him ride around on that bike, boom, up the graphic went. That was some ridiculous shit, wasn't it? Let's talk about WWE Raw this week. And we're not going through the results, don't worry, but we got to talk about the heel turn that we saw from Drew McIntyre. So the opening of the show had the big thing with the War Games combatants on opposite sides, and that's where they were goading the Judgment Day guys against each other, pitting them against each other, trying to get them to admit who the leader is. And Cody, we all know that Rhea is your leader, and that's when Priest speaks up and says, "I'm the leader," and he kind of got that ooh and ah from the crowd. And, everybody brawls. Backstage, Rhea lets it be known that she really is the leader, but she says, hey, she talks to Dominic and McDonough and Balor, and she goes, if you guys are all in agreement, I think that, I'm fine with Priest being the leader at War Games. So she goes, okay, it's settled. At War Games, you're in charge. When really, I think we all know Ripley is in charge. Later on, Priest goes to give JD McDonough his Judgment Day jacket. He has been officially welcomed into the group now by its leader, Damian Priest, who gives him the jacket. And then Rhea Ripley had a big night on the mic, absolutely demolishing poor Zoe Stark on the mic. I mean, nobody really expected Zoe to beat Rhea Ripley anyway at Survivor Series, but I think there's even less of a chance now. And Rhea destroyed her on the mic and will likely destroy her in the ring at Survivor Series. Now, one of the things I noticed in that opening promo about the leader thing, as soon as that happened, that to me is evidence that Judgment Day is going to lose. I kind of thought they were going to initially win War Games, but I think they're going to wind up losing it now because of that leader stuff. But I still think there's a chance for Damian Priest to walk out as the World Heavyweight Champion and we see a cash-in. Excuse me. In the main event of Raw, Cody and Jay got their tag team title rematch against Damian Priest and Finn Balor, but they fell short because Drew McIntyre finally turned heel. He showed up at ringside, claymored Jey Uso, threw him in the ring, and allowed Balor, I think, to get the pin, and Priest and Balor retained. And Drew, as he's leaving, he stands on the stage. Ripley comes out. They look at each other. They smile. They shake hands. They've been kind of setting that up over the past few weeks. Rhea talking to McIntyre a couple of times backstage. They wouldn't have done all that if it wasn't going to mean something later, so we pretty much knew that that was going to tie into a Drew McIntyre heel turn somehow once that happened. And here it happened, and now it looks like the deal has been made, and he's going to be joining Judgment Day in War Games against Cody and Jay and Sammy and who the fuck else? And they are down one man now. So who's it going to be? Who's going to join the baby faces? They need someone. And I think that probably only one name is realistic for that, and that's the Viper. Vintage Randy Orton. There's been a lot of talk about him coming back. How long has he been out? Feels like a year and a half, maybe more or less, somewhere around there. It's been a long time. We know he's been working out. He's been seen and spotted at the PC. There's been various reports about WWE starting to factor him into plans all the way back to last summer. So it sounds like, based on everything that the people that I trust in wrestling media have heard, that Randy Orton is going to be the likely partner here. I don't know if they're going to try to reveal that at Survivor Series or if they bring Randy Orton out on Monday night. I'm kind of hoping they do because we have a post-Raw podcast plan for Monday, and that will be a fun thing to talk about if Randy Orton comes out and gets that return pop on Monday instead of at Survivor Series where it might distract too much from everything else. I think you might actually have to get Randy Orton out there sooner. How does Randy Orton fit into this? I don't know. I think he's got history with people like Cody Rhodes. I think if Cody is going to be the one that's going to search for a partner, it would make sense that he would pick Randy Orton. He would give him a call, as Cody says, and recruit him to the team. And that would put a lot of wild card factors into the match because now you got McIntyre on Judgment Day's side, who's recently turned heel, and then you have a returning Randy Orton who we haven't seen in a year and a half coming back to join a lot of people on one team that he's had some history with. Seth Rollins. I almost forgot the fucking champion. So it's Cody, Seth, Jay, Sammy, and probably Randy Orton. If it's not Randy Orton, who would it be? Kevin Owens? I don't want it to be Kevin Owens. I want Kevin Owens to keep his ass where he is. I think the draft needs to try to remain somewhat stable under Triple H. I understand it's kind of impossible, and they're still going to mix and match the talent, but I feel like the men's War Games match for Raw, the women's for SmackDown, and don't interchange them. But if it's not going to be Randy Orton, I think Kevin Owens would make the most sense. And then on the babyface side for the women on SmackDown, a lot of people have been talking about Becky Lynch, but I don't want it to be Becky Lynch. She's kind of doing some stuff on Raw anyway. Who'd she come out and attack last week? I forgot. But I feel like Kevin Owens and Becky Lynch are already doing their own little stories right now. So I don't think they need to come into the match. You know, I don't know who the women are going to find. Jade Cargill feels very likely at this point. Maybe that's why we haven't heard her name on TV. You know, they brought her in, they started talking about her a lot, and then we haven't heard much about her. I don't think that's necessarily a mistake or WWE's fucking anything up. There's a reason for that. Either, you know, they're not ready to debut her yet, or they're just trying to quiet her down. So it's a bigger surprise when they bring her out on SmackDown this Friday or next Friday, you know, on the Go Home SmackDown next week. Imagine that. What a week. You know, you get Randy Orton and Jade Cargill both joining the War Games matches on Mondays and Fridays, respectively. So That would be really awesome if it was Jade. I feel like that's likely, but if it's not her, they might have to bring a Becky Lynch from Raw. But I would rather not see that. I would rather have everybody stay on their own brands as it relates to that, because, otherwise it's just devaluing even more the already worthless and meaningless draft. So Randy Orton, if he comes out this Monday, that's going to be awesome. I hope that it's Randy Orton. I've missed him. It'll be good to see him back. And that could tie into a lot of what they do storyline-wise heading into the end of the year and Royal Rumble, and might even sort of lay more groundwork for what we're likely to see at WrestleMania. I just talked about Backlash in France next year. That's probably going to be Cody's first title defense. The American Nightmare is going to be in France. You got to look it up. Have you ever seen, it's like a video, a long compilation of like Miss Universe pageant contestants announcing the country they're from. And they got everybody. They're like Mexico, and Brazil and America and United States and Canada. And they have all these women shouting out their countries. And then they get to the last one and she goes, France. You just got to see it. It's the best. It's the best thing ever. Look it up. So from now on, to me, France is always France. So that might be Cody's first title defense. Probably will be. Hopefully they do stuff in this match that kind of gives you an indication of what they might do. And maybe even Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre kind of have a path that's a little more lit than it is now, because we don't know what the hell Drew is going to do. And of course, there's the possibility of the cash-in, something that I've been talking about forever. And I think that Damian Priest could very well cash in here in terms of it being a good spot to do it, because a few things in my mind have to line up. It should be a show that doesn't have Roman on it or doesn't have another championship on it that's going to take away the spotlight from your championship. I mean, even Gunther doesn't even have much of a title defense. He's fighting fucking Miz. So it feels like all of the attention. Rhea Ripley's got probably an easy victory. Not an easy, but she's got a likely victory there against Zoe Stark. There's no other championships either on the line or really in any serious jeopardy. None of them, except for Seth, who's in that cage with 9 other people. One of them has a briefcase. As a champion, is Seth Rollins not at all concerned about this? I don't know I know him and Cody had a little backstage interaction on Raw. I don't know if this was talked about, but is Seth at least acknowledging that he is a banged up world champion going into a very dangerous match that's going to risk his career and title run, and one of the people in that match could just decide in the middle of the match that he wants a title shot right there? Seth is willing to shut a door behind him and lock it and be in there with all of that unpredictability. Even a babyface champion wouldn't be out of line for saying, yo, I don't want to be in this match. So I think that Seth is, if he was to survive this, it would be like Pulp Fiction when after Jules and Vincent waste the Brett and his friends eating the Kona Kahuna burgers or whatever. And then Jerry Seinfeld runs out of the bathroom and unloads the gun into him and every bullet misses. We should be fucking dead, y'all. We should be fucking dead, man. I think is what Samuel L. Jackson said. And that's what I would say about Seth Rollins. If he leaves Survivor Series, still world heavyweight champion, he should be fucking dead, man. So he's got to cash in. I feel like this has got to be where it is. But there's so many other factors here. How does it all go down? I feel like it would be great if Judgment Day lost the match, but Damian Priest wins the title. That's what I would do. So if you do that, Randy Orton will probably help be the deciding factor there in getting the baby faces the win. And then it's got to be a post-match angle of some kind. Something's got to happen. Maybe the baby faces start leaving the ring and, I don't know, McIntyre attacks and throws Rollins back in the cage and they shut the door and they lock it. And then they got kendo sticks under the ring, and the rest of Judgment Day stands on top of the cage with the kendo sticks, just ready to beat off the baby faces who are trying to, get in the ring and stop it. Priest has got a referee in there and the briefcase, cashes in right there. Boom, hits his finisher on an already destroyed Rollins that the heels already, fucked up earlier. Something like that. and then Priest wins the title. That's what I would do for Survivor Series. I would belt up Damian Priest. I think it's time. I didn't think it was time at Crown Jewel. This didn't feel right in the middle of the card to do that. Feels right here. Main event situation, a great way to, have Priest win on a big stage. He is winning on the main event of a big 4 pay-per-view, winning the title, at a Survivor Series, WWE's second oldest pay-per-view other than WrestleMania. So that would be great for him. I would rather have him win it here than at Payback or Crown Jewel or TLC or whatever. This is perfect. This is where you do it. It's just a matter of how you execute it and how you factor in Randy Orton and how you factor in Drew McIntyre and the rest of the baby faces and what sort of an angle they do. But it feels like when you got a cage out there, you have potential to isolate, Rollins and really take advantage of that and win the title. And I think, unless Priest gets injured in the match or something in storyline, there should be no excuse for him. This is his chance, and he needs to acknowledge that. Anyway, we should talk about AEW Dynamite this week as well, but I don't want to get into all of it. Just want to talk about the setup. We have Full Gear tomorrow, so a lot of what I'm going to talk about here is obsolete, but there's a couple of things that happened on the show that I think could be good indicators as to what's going to happen tomorrow at Full Gear. The first thing is the opening match, Moxley and Wheeler Yuta defeating Orange Cassidy and Hook. Really gnarly looking seatbelt spot on Hook. It looked like he just ripped both of his shoulders out of the sockets, and Hook took a loss there. And Moxley and Yuta won. But what was interesting about that was Moxley kind of no-selling the orange punch. And granted, I wasn't paying enough attention before this, but I think prior to the match on Wednesday, I was of the belief that the Full Gear match between Moxley and Cassidy was just them getting back on track. From Moxley having to call that audible, lose the title. Now Cassidy's got the belt back, and now they're going to put the belt on Moxley to resume whatever their plans were, but maybe not. The plan might have been for Moxley to beat Orange Cassidy and then drop the belt back to him. But that got goofed up when Moxley coughed up the belt early and Cassidy won it back. So now maybe this match that's scheduled here was always supposed to happen. It was just Moxley was never supposed to drop the title. This was supposed to be a feud that was going to culminate with Orange Cassidy winning the belt back. They had to take a little detour there. We still get the match, but now Cassidy's champion again. So instead of going back to Moxley like I kind of thought they were going to do, I think Cassidy's going to retain, beat Jon Moxley, and just, win the match that he was probably scheduled to win months out. That's the way it feels like to me. And the reason I think that is because of how Moxley no-sold the orange punch. And I think that's going to be kind of a different story here at the pay-per-view. And I kind of think Orange Cassidy is going to beat him, but we'll talk about that in a minute. Loved the Swerve Strickland and Hangman segment. They had a stipulation to where they're going to be in the ring with Shivani, but if either guy lays a hand on the other or gets physical, they're suspended until the end of the year, and they will lose their match against each other at Full Gear. So Hangman power walks to the ring, cuts a blistering promo on Swerve Strickland, mentions Strickland's fiance leaving him and his kids not wanting to talk to him. I guess, kind of dipping into some personal stuff there with Swerve. Says that Prince Nana is using him for weed money. Says he just uses you and he takes the money he makes from you and goes and buys weed from high school kids. And at Full Gear, he's going to beat Swerve's ass, and then he's going to beat Prince Nana's ass and take his weed. And that got a big pop and ovation from the crowd. But I'm loving Hangman's energy. He's doing what I said he had to do, because I was skeptical. When Swerve did the home invasion, I was worried that Hangman could have that fire lit in him. It feels like he's cooled off. He's always been one of my favorites in AEW. I thought he had a terrific world title run, but he hasn't done a whole lot in the last year since Brawl Out, nothing of any major significance. And this was a feud that I thought could really rejuvenate him. This is the type of angle that you like to see, because both guys are going to be elevated as a result of this. This is moving Swerve up to, a main event level, and it's rejuvenating Hangman at the same time. This is the very definition of a win-win angle here. And both guys are doing great. And I love this shit. And because they had that stipulation on Wednesday where they couldn't get physical, it carried over to the Wrestling Revolver show last night where Hangman showed up and attacked Swerve Strickland because that stipulation was only in place for Wednesday, which means Hangman in the right environment can get his hands on Swerve. He took advantage of that, attacked him at an indie show. I love that. That's exactly the way something like that should go if someone invades your home. And I was worried. I said, if Hangman comes out there with his thumb up his ass and he doesn't look mad about this, this whole angle is going to shit the bed. It all hinges on how Hangman reacts to his home being invaded. And if he phones this in or has any sort of, kind of nonchalant attitude about it, it's not going to hit right. And to his credit, he did well. This whole thing's been terrific. I loved the first match. I can't see Swerve winning 2 in a row against him. This is going to be, I think, a Texas death match. And it's going to be good tomorrow. I think tomorrow is going to be a show stealer between those two guys. We had Samoa Joe's hilarious squash against that fella who did Joe did his walk away from the dive. And in midair, he looks at him like, what the F? And hits the mat. Hilarious. After the match, Joe gets on the mic and basically offers up his friendship to MJF. And as of right now, MJF still doesn't have a partner for his 0-hour title defense against the Ass Clan, but he probably is going to have some help in that match in the form of Joe. The Bucks, I believe, kind of completed the heel turn here on Wednesday as well, beating Penta and Commander with a couple of low blows and a BTE trigger, fighting Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega backstage in a backstage interview segment, shoving match and all of that when Jericho showed up. And they even got booed by the California crowd. They're going to be working a pay-per-view match tomorrow in LA, right in their own neighborhood, and they might get booed tomorrow, and they probably will. And I always thought that Kenny and Jericho were going to win this match. I'm not so sure now, but we'll be predicting that in a minute. They had my favorite match of the night on Dynamite was the Dragon Gaiden Street Fight presented by Sega. I loved Brian Cage's Sega-themed gear. Congratulations to Brian Cage, by the way. Had himself a child, I think the day before, this crazy Ninja Gaiden Street Fighter, whatever the fuck it was. So it's Chris Jericho, it's a Callis family. Powerhouse Hobbs, Takeshita, Kyle Fletcher, and Brian Cage against Kenny Omega, Chris Jericho, Kota Ibushi, and Paul White. Now, when they set this up a couple of weeks ago and brought Paul White out, I was thinking this was going to be for a full gear match. It wasn't. This is just basically a ballistic, crazy brawl, very anarchy in the arena, like with brawling all over the place and all of that. Jericho and Paul White came out in all black suits. I'm guessing that's some sort of a video game character type of reference there. And Paul White, bless his heart, who never even makes it down to the ringside area. He just stands up at the stage and lets people come to him. They wind up brawling. He winds up brawling in the backstage parking area with Powerhouse Hobbs. They wind up on a kind of like a pallet of wood or something up real high. And Hobbs slams Big Show off of that platform onto a car hood. And Paul White rolls off and takes a pretty hellacious bump for someone his age, going out of his way like that to take a really dangerous bump, all to put Powerhouse Hobbs over. That's why Paul White gets a pass with me. What a legend. What a legend. He didn't have to do that. He could have gotten seriously hurt on something like that old dude. He's walking around all lopsided out there. He's had hip surgeries, and he is not fit for, competitive action in my mind. And he's taking a bump like that, all for Powerhouse Hobbs. That's great. I hope that Hobbs really can, and AEW can get him to the potential that we all see in him. He is just stupidly scary looking, and I love him. So that was great. I would have preferred it if it would have ended there for Powerhouse Hobbs, if he wouldn't have made it back to the ring, but he did. He got all the way back in the ring and resumed the brawl with everybody else. My favorite part of the whole show, probably my favorite moment of the week, was Kota Ibushi on stage, getting on the bike. It's like a 10-speed, and he rides down to the ring, and he's got like a lead pipe. And as he's riding down the ring, he is just tapping everybody on the head with it like a Hogan chair shot. it was the weakest looking shit, but it was one of those things where I didn't care. I didn't really want that to look real, you know? I'm not going to complain about, oh, that didn't look real enough. He's on a fucking bike. What did look real is Brian Cage clotheslining his ass off the bike and completely flipping him over into a really sick bump. So as weak as those pipe shots were, the bump made up for it. There was pile drivers through tables. They were doing all sorts of crazy shit in this match. They wound up tying up, duct taping Powerhouse Hobbs' arms and face and head to the ring ropes, while Kenny Omega hit an unbelievably impressive one-winged angel on Brian Cage for the win, getting that big guy up. And he looked like he did it with ease too, you know, and then just put him down. I mean, that takes a lot of strength. I don't know why he gets this reputation of being this twinkle toe little fucking wrestler. Dude is strong as shit. My God. And he's good, regardless of what Crazy Man Cornette says. That was impressive. I loved Omega hitting that one-winged angel on Brian Cage. I'm like, damn, I was worried he was going to botch it or drop him down on his head, but he hit it. He hit it as perfectly as he would have if he put it on Commander. You know, it was crazy smooth. And the final segment of Dynamite was the big MJF promo. He's attacked by, you know, BG Gold and laid out, and Jay White stands tall with that AEW title. He's been running around with that title for so long. It really does make the main event predictable in terms of the outcome. But that's okay, because they might have bigger plans for the main event if there's going to be some devil shit going on. So even if MJF retains, as we are predicting that he will, we could still see something pretty major go down to close out Full Gear. We'll have to see. So let's predict Full Gear. It's about that time. Let me get back over here to the chat and get refreshed so I can see what you guys are saying to me. We've got a comment here from my shoot brother of 15 months. Thank you for that, Spectre. Glad you're here. How's it hanging? Family finished moving into our new place. I forgot how much unpacking sucks. In wrestling news, who should take the belt from MJF? I'm thinking Swerve. I had the exact same thought today when I was making my notes. I said, when it comes time for MJF to lose the title, I would be perfectly happy with Swerve. But MJF still, you know, I don't know if they're going to save his title run for when Adam Cole comes back, or how they want to do that story. I don't know. But I thought the same thing, you know, Swerve, you know, this feud with Hangman, I think, will be the final stepping stone, you know, he needs to get to the main event. You know, he did the stuff with, you know, Sting and Darby in the coffin match and all that nonsense. And that was really, really entertaining. And he's proved that he was probably one of WWE's biggest blunders in terms of releases. I mean, why WWE let him go, I'll never know. And he's probably going to throw it in their face. I think he kind of feels motivated to do that he really wants to succeed. And he's certainly capable. And I think he's quickly becoming one of the best at the world at this. So if he turns out to be in 2024, the person that takes the belt off of MJF, I would love it, especially if MJF continues to get over as this babyface. You know, because if you have a heel like Swerve, a home invading asshole like Swerve, who also just happens to be a great promo and a great wrestler with a ton of heel heat, taking the title off, you know, one of the most over babyface champions AEW's had so far, that could be a pretty good recipe. I think it could. So he would be my early pick for sure, especially with, you know, because he's taken some L's. I think he's going to lose tomorrow at Full Gear, but I think it's going to be a match that, you know, is still going to see another battle with Hangman Page. I don't think it's going to be completely over here, but should serve as a stepping stone to him really getting closer to that AEW title one day. So he'd be my pick too. I would have no issue with that whatsoever if Swerve Strickland was the guy to beat MJF for the title next year. I'd be cool with that. But let's predict AEW Full Gear. We're going to start with the 0 hour. MJF defending the Ring of Honor tag team titles against the Ass Boys. I feel like MJF is going to retain here, and I think Samoa Joe is going to help him out. Samoa Joe's been offering his services. MJF knows he's going to have to contend with Samoa Joe, but I think Samoa Joe is also sticking close to MJF because he has, you know, motivation behind that, getting his hands on the AEW world title. So I think he's going to step in and help MJF tomorrow. Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega versus the Young Bucks. The Young Bucks title shot that they've had for a while is going to be on the line here. So if they lose, Jericho and Kenny get the shot. The Young Bucks, we just saw them kind of complete the heel turn on Wednesday. Maybe not all the way, because even in the shoving match backstage, they kept telling Kenny, we didn't have a problem with you. We just wanted to talk. I wonder where that situation has taken place before. And they didn't totally go after him, but they wanted to rip Jericho's face off. They fucking hate him. And they want to beat Jericho and Kenny. So after they beat them, the Winnipeg Jets or whatever, the Golden Jets nonsense is over, and Kenny can come back to be an elite. But I think something's probably going to happen in this match where the Young Bucks are going to probably attack Kenny or BTE him or something like that. And before, I thought Kenny and Jericho would probably win this. I thought they would get the tag title shot and maybe even win the championship, something that they could say they did together or whatever. Maybe there's some other behind-the-scenes reason for them wanting to team up for an extended period and maybe even win championships together. That's kind of what I thought they were going to do. But now I'm starting to think that the Young Bucks are actually going to retain their tag team title match and win and perhaps complete a heel turn, cheating to win. Plus, Young Bucks, losing in the Forum. I don't know if they would do that because they haven't even fully gone heel yet. I mean, they are, but I'm not sure if they've done enough to get an overwhelming amount of resounding boos throughout the match. I don't know if they've gotten that yet. So completing the process here, doing something really dastardly to win the match seems more likely than Kenny and Jericho winning. So I'm going to pick the Young Bucks to beat Kenny Omega and Chris Jericho. Sting, Darby Allin, and Adam Copeland taking on Nick Wayne, Luchasaurus, and Christian. Got to go with the baby faces here. I think Sting may very well go undefeated. Has he lost a match in AEW? If he has, it's been a multi-man type of thing for sure, or a tag. I think that if Sting were to go undefeated in his entire AEW career, that would be pretty cool. I don't think there's a reason to have the babyfaces lose in this encounter, especially when the story here really is about Adam and Christian. You got a 12-year-old Nick Wayne in this match. Just slap the Scorpion Deathlock on that little prick and tap him out. That's all you need to do here. And I think the babyfaces will win. I'm going with Sting, Darby Allin, and Adam Copeland. And then I think maybe if you're going to do Adam Copeland and Christian, you got to do it at some point. That could be a World's End thing, but maybe they want to hold it off a little longer. Otherwise, I would maybe book that one for World's End is what I would do there. But definitely going to go babyfaces for the win there. And then I'm assuming, Darby Allin is still kind of about to begin or in the midst of his Mount Everest training. So that's going to make his participation limited in the next few months. So we'll have to see what happens there. Here's a wild card, man. Chris Statlander defending her TBS title against Julia Hart and Sky Blue in a three-way. Sky Blue got her opportunity on Wednesday beating Red Velvet. Julia Hart has already been in this match. Julia Hart is becoming a big deal in AEW. She's getting over. AEW has been very happy with how she's been developing. Her and Toni Storm, I think, are the two kind of best things going right now in the women's division. I feel like it might be premature to take the title off of Chris Statlander. I do. However, you are in a triple threat match here. You are in a three-way. There is a way to protect Statlander if you wanted to belt up Julia Hart. Win or lose here, I think Julia is going to continue doing great things. I don't think she has to win here yet. I think it's a bit early for her. But, then again, that TBS title hasn't moved around a whole lot because Jade Cargill held it for so long. Statlander hasn't held it for very long. But if AEW, sees potential or sees an opportunity in this Julia Hart character and wants to take advantage of it right away by putting the TBS title on her and putting an early championship on her, at least they've set themselves up here in a triple threat scenario where Julia could win without pinning Statlander, leading to some matches between them, for the title if they wanted to belt Julia. But they could easily just have Statlander retain here, keep pushing Julia, and then have her win the next time these two face. Maybe at World's End, the name of that pay-per-view I don't know, feels like it fits Julia Hart's character a little bit better. You know what I mean? So maybe hold it off until then, but I feel like Julia's got a real chance here, man. Normally, I would not pick her to win this, even though she's been getting over, but I feel like she has a chance. She could miss somebody. You know, Sky Blue has already had some issues with that. Willow Nightingale could make her presence known here. I could see that happening. I could see like Willow and anybody else that Julia's been misting, perhaps appearing, causing Julia to not win. Not necessarily lose, but maybe not win, distracting her to where Statlander can pin Sky Blue or even get a quick roll-up on Julia Hart, and then Julia Hart finishes her business with the Willows and the Skies or whatever she's going to do there, whether it's create a faction that she's the leader of or, you know, opponents that she's going to dispose of. She does that for a little longer. Then she gets the rematch one-on-one with Statlander and wins the title. You could do it either way. I'm really tempted to pick Julia Hart because I don't think I see. Oh, no, I'm not. Never mind. I was about to say, I don't think I'm picking another title change, but I am. So, yeah, I'm going to predict Statlander to win. But if they pulled off an upset here and Julia Hart won the title, I would not be disappointed. But I would probably wait and either do the title change at World's End or do the title change. You know what AEW needs right now? They need a women's main event, man. You know, they do such shit job with the women's division and the booking. I would book Statlander versus Julia Hart on a main event collision and put Julia over. That's what I would do. We'll see. Hangman Page versus Swerve Strickland, Texas death match. You guys know where I stand there. Hangman Page is going to get the win here. You can't let someone invade your home, stand over the crib of your baby, and then have them beat you in a match. Hangman Page is winning that, and that's going to be a good one. That one's going to be a show stealer. Crazy tag team match. We got Ricky Starks and Big Bill defending against FTR, Malachi Black and Brody King, and Rush and Dralistico. I could kind of see FTR winning here, you know, and then you got Bucks who are going to retain their number one contenders match, and FTR, you can still set that back up. And now it's babyface. Now it's heel versus babyface instead of babyface versus babyface. Maybe that's what some of the stalling was for. Because I had my suspicions, I should say, about Ricky Starks and Big Bill's win over FTR. It was almost like, oh, let's drop the belts to them so we don't have to drop them to the Bucks kind of thing, you know. And now if they were to win the belts back, now the Bucks are heels, which means they could, you know, lose and drops the titles to the Bucks, but now the Bucks are heels, which means they could cheat to win. You know, this could all be totally political. You know, when you really look at it, because my eyebrow has been raised about that Ricky Starks and Big Bill match ever since they won, because it was so out of the blue. And I'm like, why the fuck did they do that? And I think this thing might all have been, you know, a political play, maybe by FTR. Like, okay, if we have to, you know, lose to the Bucks, I guess they could have just kept the titles the whole time and Bucks could have turned heel, but you would think they would have had to do the match before then. So maybe this was a stalling tactic to get FTR politically positioned better to be able to lose the belts to the Bucks if they have to. I don't know. Just, you know, juicy speculation. That's all. But I wasn't sure about that victory. So I feel like a title change is possible here. I feel like FTR could win the titles back. I do. But I don't think they're gonna. I think if you're going to go through the trouble of belting up Ricky Starks and Big Bill, keep the belts on them a little bit longer. WWE just did this recently too. Put the belts on Cody and Jay, took them right back off. What the fuck you put them on them for? So I don't think they're going to take them off Ricky and Bill here. I'm going to predict Ricky Starks and Big Bill to win and retain the titles, which would be good for them. A championship victory on a pay-per-view for Ricky Starks and Big Bill. That's great for them. So I am going to go Ricky and Billy. Jon Moxley challenging Orange Cassidy for the international title. We talked about this a minute ago. Orange Cassidy, you know, Moxley no-sold that orange punch. I think Orange Cassidy is going to rectify that at the pay-per-view. He's going to put down Moxley and he's going to continue his international title run. And he's going to get his win back against Jon Moxley from All Out. Toni Storm challenging Hikaru Shida for the AEW women's title. This one is predictable as hell to me. There is no way you don't put the title on Toni Storm here. You know, Shida winning it back to begin with was kind of weird, but Toni Storm is getting so over with this character, this persona. It's doing very well. I would just put the belt on her right now because she's the best thing you got, and that the belt should go on your most over talent, I believe. I think she's going to get some help here from Mariah May. Mariah May came in a couple of weeks ago. Last night, RJ City tried to get her into Toni Storm's dressing room and all of that around Wednesday. So I think Mariah May will probably play a role in this. And apparently the storyline they're doing with Mariah May and Toni Storm is based off an old movie, I think from the 50s or something. I forget the name of it. So it should be pretty easy to see where this is going if you're familiar with the movie. But I think Mariah May will definitely have something to do with that match. And Toni Storm will win the AEW Women's Championship against Hikaru Shida. That is my prediction. And that leaves us with the main event, MJF defending the AEW Triple B that he doesn't even have against main event Jay White. I'm kidding. Switchblade Jay White. This one's easy. I think this is going to be an awesome match. Terrific match. Kick-ass match. Going to be all kinds of fun. Going to have all kinds of interference. We could see some henchmen appear. We could see the Devil appear. We could see Roddy and the Kingdom appear. We're going to see the Ass Boys show up. Juice Robinson is going to be running out there like, he's, in the scene in Home Alone 2 where Marv electrocutes himself in the basement. That's what I think of whenever I see Juice Robinson. So Juice Robinson is going to be running around there like Marv from Home Alone 2. And there's going to be all sorts of fun. But at the end of the day, I think MJF's going to put Jay White down. He's going to retain his Triple B. He's going to retain and regain it all in one match. He's going to celebrate with the championship. And the big question is, after the match, is there going to be a beatdown? Is something going to happen with the Devil or the henchmen? Are they already going to come out there? Are they going to swerve everybody? Another thing that I think is possible is the henchmen help MJF win or something, and then really throw the fans off. Because you got to remember, the first time we saw them, they were attacking Jay White. So for them to attack the Acclaimed next, you didn't really know. At first, you thought they were allies of MJF. No, they're targeting MJF. So if they come out there and they're allies to him and they help him fend off all of these other people coming after him, then that could make you wonder even more and add more speculation to who the Devil is. Like I said, I don't think we'll get a Devil reveal tomorrow night, but we could. We could. But if they want to do something where the Devil is going to be an Adam Cole or an MJF himself, I don't think tomorrow would be where they would do that. I think they're going to hold that off a little longer. We could also see Samoa Joe come back out there. Don't forget Samoa Joe's likely going to be helping out MJF at the pre-show. So do you think Samoa Joe will also be there as backup for him, maybe after their win? After they win on the 0 hour, Joe's like, just so you know, I'll be looking out for you tonight too. But don't get too used to it type of thing. And, maybe Joe is also present in that main event if you have a lot of interference from the rest of, Bullet Club Gold and whatnot. So we will see. But at the end of the day, I think MJF's going to win, retain his title, regain the physical Triple B belt so we can finally start carrying that around again. And then Jay White, can maybe move on to something else as well. I wouldn't mind seeing Jay White beat Orange Cassidy for the TNT Championship, or perhaps put Jay White in the Continental thing and in the G1 tournament that they're doing, something like that. But I think MJF, he's AEW's champion right now. He needs to keep running with it, and I'm keeping the belt on MJF absolutely. So there you go. There's my Full Gear predictions in a nutshell. We still have 24 minutes before SmackDown and Collision goes on the air. I want to look up if we have any sort of a preview for these shows. Collision, here's some matches for Collision tonight. It looks like it's going to be Trent Beretta and Penta against Brian Cage and Commander. Penta and Commander teamed up on Dynamite, didn't they? Okay, that one's weird. We also have Wheeler Yuta versus Buddy Matthews. Okay. We've got Saraya and Ruby Soho versus Hikaru Shida and Chris Statlander. Wow. The two women's champs teaming up to take on Saraya and Soho. That's happening. And we also have on Rampage tonight, Tony Schiavone is going to interview MJF. Renee's going to interview Jay White. What else we got? I'm just scrolling through AEW's Twitter. Oh, we also have Dax Harwood against Roosh tonight on Collision. Okay. I think that's about all I see. Let's check and see what WWE has to say about SmackDown tonight. Looks like we're getting Street Profits, Brutes, and Pretty Deadly. This will be a number one contenders match to challenge the Judgment Day. Okay, so that looks okay. And we're also getting a new and improved Damage Control segment, and that looks to be all they have advertised for SmackDown tonight. So we got SmackDown and Collision head-to-head, and then Rampage airs. I think it's pretty safe to say that Collision is going to destroy SmackDown in the ratings. I'm going to predict the ratings for tonight. I'm going to say Collision 2.4 million, SmackDown 150,000. That's probably what we'll see tonight for the ratings. You don't even have to bother looking them up tomorrow. I'm usually right about these things, so just take my word for it. That'll be the ratings, and I'm not sure what Rampage is going to do. Probably in the 1.5 million range. France. I'm glad somebody knows what I'm talking about. Spaz Phoenix, shout out to our friend Spazzy. Thanks for the $5. Nothing much else going on tomorrow. Why not hop over to the pod channel tomorrow morning for NXT Rewind, looking at TakeOver Brooklyn 1. Wow. That was a long time ago, man. Back in the day. Yeah, check Spaz out for all. He's got good NXT content over there, especially if you like to reminisce about the good old days. He knows his stuff over there. TK debuting Rousey tonight, Jay says. You know, that's a good point. Oh, she's backstage at Collision. Okay. All right, we got some breaking news. Thank you for letting me know this. Let's check it out since we have a few more minutes left. I talked about Ronda Rousey at the beginning of the podcast if it was going to be her tomorrow, and I said I fully expect her to join AEW. She worked with a lot of AEW talent last night, but I don't think she's going to be the one that Tony Khan brings out tomorrow. He might bring her out tonight. Apparently, that's what's going down. Sorry, my keyboard's far away. My keyboard is far away. Okay, so this is a WrestleVotes tweet. I've heard from numerous sources this evening that Ronda Rousey is backstage at tonight's AEW Collision Dynamite taping. We'll see where this leads. That's pretty obvious. I mean, she's in the area. She worked in LA last night. Sean Ross Sapp followed that up, said he has heard the same thing. So Ronda is there. They might just bring her ass out there, or maybe she's there to sign a deal and debut on Monday. But I think if she's in the building, man, and you're head-to-head with SmackDown, you bring Ronda Rousey out tonight. You absolutely bring Ronda Rousey out tonight. So we might come up here on Sunday afternoon early just for a little mini pod where we discuss Rousey, we discuss Full Gear in a nutshell, blanket overview type of style. We might do that on Sunday before our big podcast on Monday. Just depends on what happens, but definitely sounds like Ronda Rousey is in the house. That's awesome. Makes me even more disappointed that I'm not up in LA right now for that. But I think that's pretty great that Ronda is there. I hope they bring her out tonight. That will be fantastic. And maybe I'll have to rethink those ratings and give Collision even more numbers. Might have to. Anyway, I'm going to see if you guys have any more things to say here in the chat before I bounce out of that. Mike Rouse, no, there is going to be no watch along tomorrow. I am completely not home for any Full Gear festivities tomorrow, Mike. I explained this in the beginning of the podcast. Not going to be able to be here, but you'll be hearing all of my thoughts on Full Gear. As of now, scheduled for Monday night after Raw for the big podcast. But you might even hear from me before then because we have a watch along planned on Sunday. I'm sure we'll discuss it a little bit during that, but you'll be hearing from me. But unfortunately, I had a gigantic career monkey wrench thrown right into my pay-per-view day tomorrow that unfortunately was unavoidable. So I have to deal with that. But I'm excited about Ronda. The pop for Ronda will be pretty big. And what's cool is she can probably use her Joan Jett music. I'm sure Tony ponied up for that. She used it last night at Wrestling Revolve too, which made me wonder how that works because I don't know. I would assume, licensing music like that, even for one night, would be kind of pricey for an indie event, unless you don't have to license it and you're safe, and unless Ronda Rousey paid for it on her own end, or unless her deal has already been worked out with AEW and Tony Khan has purchased the licensing rights to that song, which allowed her to use it last night, and we just haven't heard about her signing yet. That could be too. She might have been signed with AEW from the minute her no-compete was up. Or well, I guess she didn't have one. Or from the minute she decided to get back. I mean, we saw her turn up, a month or so ago, right? At an indie event. So you knew she was kind of dipping her toes back in the water. She left WWE voluntarily. Would make sense that if she wants to stay in the game, going to AEW would be pretty obvious. And it would give AEW now the same exact big name that WWE, was very proud to have for a lot of the years there. They put her over pretty strong. So she would be, kind of another name. You had Ronda, Mercedes Moné, Toni Storm doing her thing right now. Mariah May just signed. The talent is there. It's just a matter of giving that talent, the exposure and the recognition that a lot of them now are going to be deserving. Tony Khan has not been very favorable to the women's booking, especially with TV time and things like that. But the more talent you get, the less of an excuse you're going to be having to do that type of shit. And it's already quite infuriating, I think, for a lot of fans of women's wrestling, that side of AEW that is so bad. But you keep bringing in big names and talent getting over, man. I guess that's a pretty good, that's a pretty good, I guess, trade. If you're going to lose Jade, but you gain Ronda and Mercedes, could be worse, right? So, yeah, I mean, maybe there's still hope for the women's division. I think that's why it would be cool. Like if I'm sitting in Mercedes Moné's shoes, who apparently really wants to try to wrestle a little bit outside of WWE. And here you have an AEW company, an AEW women's division that has seen some issues. If Mercedes were to go back to WWE, she's a big star, but she's a big star in a big pond of other big stars. She's there with the Beckys and the Charlotte, the other four horsewomen. She's now there with Rhea and Bianca and Jade and Io and Asuka and so many other great women's wrestlers, where in AEW, she could have the chance to come in and be a game changer there. If Tony Khan really wants to improve, the perception of women's wrestling in that company with the audience, Mercedes Moné could look at that as an opportunity to build her legacy. I could go to AEW and save the women's division. Where if I go to WWE, I'm going to be there, probably do great things, have great matches and all of that. But, there's going to be a lot of other women there that are also going to be doing great things, where, Mercedes could be a bigger component, I guess, in the AEW women's division. Maybe she looks at it as a challenge. Maybe Mercedes doesn't see the lack of women's exposure in AEW as a problem. Maybe she sees it as an opportunity to be the one that ushers in change. You never know with her. You never know what the motivations of a professional are. If they're personal, if they're financial, whatever, who knows what it could be. Just speculating. But, if I was in Mercedes' shoes, I would at least consider that, and especially when I'm signing my deal with Tony, I'm sure it's not like you don't talk about what you're going to do. If I'm signing my deal with Tony, I would like some assurances that you're going to feature me, focus me. I don't want to turn into Miro. I don't want you to do to him what you did to me. I'm not going to sign with you unless you promise me you're not going to do that type of shit. Or maybe have an out in the contract to where it says, if I don't like what I'm doing creatively, I can leave. And if I was Mercedes, that's what I would have written in there if I was her, especially with, how, kind of up and down the women's division in AEW can be. So, maybe she looks at that and Ronda, the same thing, that they can really come in there and help change the game in the women's division in AEW. And I hope they do. So I'm excited. I'm going to be eyeballing my phone tonight to see when Ronda comes out. I can pull up a Collision and SmackDown on my phone. And I'm going to try to check that out tonight, and hopefully they bring her out. But that's very cool news that we got right at the end of this podcast. Ronda Rousey is right now backstage at AEW Collision. She did work an indie event last night in the same city, so this is not that shocking. But them bringing her out tonight on Collision seems like a real possibility, especially since they're going head-to-head with WWE SmackDown. So there you have it. I hope you guys have a great Friday night. Enjoy SmackDown, enjoy Collision, enjoy Rampage, and enjoy Full Gear tomorrow. Really, really sorry that I'm not going to be here. Unfortunately, things like this happen, but it's rare. But you will get comments on Full Gear no later than Monday night during our big podcast. But if we get really juicy things happening, I'll pop in early on Sunday before our classic watch along, and we'll talk a little bit about it. Otherwise, tomorrow, Saturday, I would love updates, comments, opinions, recaps and reviews of what you're watching on Full Gear, what happens. Let me know your thoughts. Give me updates. Not sure how much I'm going to be able to look at my phone. So over on the Twitters, I'm at Good Mic Work. I would love if you guys would tag me in a few updates tomorrow during the pay-per-view. That would be really helpful. And I will be back here as soon as I can to talk about that stuff. So thank you so much, everyone, for being here. I don't think I missed any supers. I think we're good. Thank you for being here. Enjoy your Friday night. Enjoy your Full Gear Saturday. And I'll be catching you guys on Sunday. Y'all take care. Peace.